And welcome back to another daily devotion. I'm Pastor Roy here at Woodlawn Christian Church in Lake City, Iowa, and this devotion is for Friday, July 21st of 2023. We are in the book of 2 Corinthians. We're in the 12th chapter. We just started chapter 12 yesterday, and today we're going to take the bite from verse 6 to verse 10. We're going to finish up the first section. It's really divided in the RSV into two sections, this chapter. The first section is called Paul's Visions and Revelations. We talked about that yesterday. The visions that he had, they're not really a vision, so per se. He said he was taken up into heaven, and we talked about that. This is possibly a near-death experience, and it's possible, in my opinion, that probably is connected to the stoning he received in Lystra. And when he got back up after they prayed over him and walked back into the city, remember that one? That's in Acts chapter 14. But at any rate, this is a continuation talking about these revelations a little bit, and he's still talking about boasting and this whole thing, this last bit of chapter 11, and here and tomorrow we'll be talking again a little bit more about boasting. These super apostles that he's contending with that have trying to supplant him, so to say, try to undermine him. Maybe it's a better word. Probably supplanting is better. We'll go with supplanting. But at any rate, these super apostles, these guys he's contending with here, that have been apparently putting up their credentials and kind of chiseling away at Paul's credentials, have forced him to have to give his resume. He does that a few other times in his letters too. When Paul has to, he's got a pretty stunning resume. But this is the only time, in what we talked about yesterday, when he brings up this revelation of heaven, being taken up into heaven, into the third heaven, in fact. So we talked about that yesterday. We won't talk about it anymore. If you want to hear that, go listen to yesterday's devotion. Might not be a bad idea, just so you get all of chapter 12 if you want to listen to this one and that one. But today we have a little different thing. We're going to be picking up that we alluded to yesterday, this thorn in the flesh. This gets a lot of talking about in sermons and in theological things. What is the thorn and what does it mean and all of that. So let's read verses 6 to 10, and then we'll talk some more about the thorn and such. Though if I wish to boast, I shall not be a fool, for I shall be speaking the truth. But I refrain from it, so that no one may think more of me than he sees in me or hears from me. And to keep me from being too elated by the abundance of revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from being too elated. 3 times I besought the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. I will all the more gladly boast of my weaknesses, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Okay. And a few days back, we talked about all of the times Paul was beaten and all of that, and the shipwrecks and stonings and all of those things, all of those hardships and persecutions, insults. That was kind of the minor one. But now he's contending with this weakness, whatever this might be, or this thing that is besetting him, and haranguing him, this thorn, whatever it might be. A lot of times people say it's a physical thing, that it's I've heard saying that he had malaria. Probably the most common thought or line of thinking is that this is something to do with Paul's vision. In different places, he talks about his vision, and look at the large letters I'm writing and all of that when he's signing off from his letters. And there are places where Paul's vision seems to be questionable, and so that's, if it's a physical thing, that's probably seems to be the most likely candidate, that it might be a vision thing. But I would contend, or I would present, perhaps a better word, I would present that in light of what we're reading here and what we've been talking about here about these super apostles, and by God, they bothered him other places. Remember, we talked about Galatians a couple days back, and they're definitely in Galatians and other places. These super apostles seem to be kind of a pain in the side, so to say. And I have for a while presented my thoughts that perhaps this thorn is actually these this contention that he has to face with from some other faction. If it weren't for this other faction, it basically keeps him honest, if for want of a better word. And that's the case when we talk, when we have to deal with people that disagree with us. We have to shore up our own argument, don't we? That's one thing that forces us to do. When we have people contending with us, we have to think about what is our own stance, and we have to shore up our own beliefs. And so that's very much something that is that I think is probably going on here. I'm going to adjust the camera, and I apologize for that. My phone is wanting to lean forward for some reason today. But at any rate, and I apologize for that. I think everybody got a little bit of wooziness from the camera moving. But at any rate, Paul has prayed for this thing to be removed, and God says, "My grace is sufficient for you." Jesus says to him, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Many times we see things that will, trying to keep us honest, so to say. I've talked before about, one of my great weaknesses is my ego. I've historically I've had a very inflated ego. And in my younger days, I had a beautiful head of hair, which is hard to believe, isn't it? And my ego is badly bruised by the fact that my hair is gone, and even less of it than before, because I've just decided to just shave it all off. If it's going to be gone, it's just easier to be rid of it all. But lest I think too highly of my earthly self, God has given me that thorn. And there's other things that we might have, even the inability to articulate the word that I want, which upsets me often. I can't come up with the right word that I want for the moment. That is another thing to keep you from getting too prideful. Pride goes before a fall. And so if the more prideful we are about ourselves, the less we're focused on God. And so we need to keep that in check. And so there could be anything like that, whether it's a physical illness or what have you. Things like that are there to give us, to give us pause and remember that we would be nothing without the Lord. And I think that's what's going on with Paul. I do think there's probably these whoever these super apostles are, whether you want to think they're the people from James, the faction that is a little more Jewish oriented. Paul wants to have Jewish light. I've talked about that before. That's kind of what Paul is doing. This removing the need for circumcision was a big deal, and that was certainly what was going on in Galatia. Possibly what's going on here, though he doesn't mention circumcision here, so who knows? But at any rate, it has certainly been part of why he was being confronted by some folks, whoever they folks were, in Galatia. And so there's folks here again confronting him, or have been there in his absence at least, not necessarily actually physically confronting him. In Galatia, they seem to have actually physically confronted him. Here, they may have been there in his absence and are undermining his authority with them. So that's what I think we've got for this now. We're going to leave it off at that. Paul's going to continue having his concerns for the church in Corinth, but we're getting very close to the end. I think we'll probably be done with 2 Corinthians sometime toward the middle of next week. Maybe it should be done before the end of the week. So I've got to figure out what else I'm going to do. I do want to warn you all, I will be gone for a few days in August. We are going to be going to see our son down in Florida. His girlfriend is graduating, and he desperately wanted us to come down. Her family will be there. She's from China. His girlfriend and her parents live here in the States, but her grandparents don't. Her grandparents are here, and so they're going to be down there. So my son and she wants us to come down to meet her parents and her grandparents. So we will. So I'll be gone from the 3rd through the 11th for devotions. So there won't be any devotions on August 3rd, 4th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. Be back for the 14th. And so we'll pick up something for that, for the end of next week and the beginning of that week. May not jump into another book is what I'm, long story short, may not jump into another book. I may just do something else for a few days just to kind of fill in before we dive into it. I hate to start a book and then, you know, jet out on you and leave you hanging again. I don't want to do that to y'all. So with that, have a blessed day. Please, please, please do be a blessing to someone today. And if you enjoy these devotions, please like and subscribe. Leave a nice, kind comment. Don't hurt Pastor Roy's tender feelings. You know, you don't want to bruise my fragile ego. All right? Take care. God bless. God loves you. Bye-bye.